She thought her American savings gave her freedom, a safety net woven from decades of hard work, stretching halfway across the world to a life she chose, a love she fought for. It was her power, her independence, her proof that she could make this controversial life with Sumit work. She never imagined her own family would be the ones to take it away. She never imagined that the very people she gave the keys to her kingdom, for her own protection, would be the ones to lock her out, leaving her stranded on a financial island. This isn't just a family squabble anymore. This is a financial ultimatum, a declaration of war fought not with words, but with wire transfers and account freezes. This is the story of how Jenny's daughters seized control, turning their mother's greatest asset into her gilded cage. What you are about to hear is the result of deep dive investigations, insider reports, and exclusive theories pieced together from sources close to the family. This is the story happening behind the cameras, the one they don't want you to see. If you want to get to the heart of the drama that reality TV can't or won't show you, then do me a favor right now. Take a second to hit that like button, and more importantly, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. You are not going to want to miss a single update as this explosive situation develops. We are just getting started. To truly understand the magnitude of what has just happened, we have to go back. Not just to the beginning of Jenny and Sumit's story, but to the source of Jenny's power, her money. For years, the central tension in their relationship, the one thing that Sumit's parents, Anil and Sahna, could never get past, was the age gap. But underneath that, the unspoken truth was always about stability. Jenny, the older American woman, represented a strange foreign kind of stability. She had a pension, she had a retirement account, she had Social Security. She was, for all intents and purposes, a self-contained financial unit. This reality quietly neutralized many of the arguments against her. While Sahna could lament her son marrying an older woman, she couldn't argue that Jenny was a financial burden. In fact, it was the opposite. Jenny's American dollars provided a lifestyle for Sumit that he had never been able to achieve on his own. It paid for their apartment, their bills, their food, their leisure. It was the foundation upon which their entire life in India was built. Jenny wasn't just Sumit's wife, she was his benefactor, the American ATM. This financial dynamic created a strange and we can now see dangerous comfort for Jenny. She believed her money gave her leverage. It gave her a seat at the table. It was her answer to the constant cultural and familial pressures. When Sumit's parents questioned her ability to fit in, she could point to the stable home she provided. When they worried about Sumit's future, she could, in her mind, reassure herself that she was securing it. She saw her savings not as a weapon, but as a shield, a way to protect her and Sumit from the world and from his own family's judgment. But every shield has a weakness, and Jenny's was one she created herself, born from love and foresight years ago in a lawyer's office back in America. Years before her permanent move to India, Jenny did what many responsible people her age do. She sat down with her daughters, Christina and Dominique, and she set up a power of attorney. It was a gesture of profound trust. It was a document designed for emergencies. If Jenny were to fall ill, become incapacitated, or unable to manage her own affairs from halfway across the world, her daughters would have the legal authority to step in. They could pay her bills, manage her investments, and ensure her life in America kept running smoothly while she was away. It was a mother's prudent planning, giving her children the power to protect her. The irony is sickening. The very tool she gave them for her protection has now become the instrument of her captivity. She handed them the sword, and they've just run her through with it. Our sources, people who have seen the growing frustration within the family, tell us this was not a sudden decision. This was a slow burn, a culmination of a decade of worry, frustration, and unanswered pleas. For years, Jenny's daughters have watched from afar, their concern growing with every new season, every new drama. They saw their mother pour her life savings into a man who, in their eyes, had never fully committed, who had hidden his previous marriage, and who seemed incapable of standing up to his own parents. They watched her isolate herself from her home, her grandchildren, and her own culture, all for a love that seemed to demand everything from her and offer very little traditional security in return. They tried talking to her. We've all seen the video calls, the strained conversations where they bite their tongues, trying to be supportive while their faces betray their deep-seated fears. They would ask the tough questions. What's the plan, Mom? What happens when the money runs out? Is Sumit ever going to work? Is he ever going to truly be your partner, or will you always be his provider? And every time they were met with Jenny's unwavering, almost defiant optimism. She would brush off their concerns, insist Sumit was trying, and reiterate her love for him. She was living in the emotional reality of her relationship, while her daughters were staring at the cold, hard math. And the math wasn't adding up. The breaking point, we are told, was a series of off-camera conversations over the last 6 months. The daughters allegedly presented Jenny with a financial reality check. They laid out the numbers, the rate at which her retirement funds were being depleted, and the lack of any incoming funds from Sumit. They weren't just worried about her emotional well-being anymore. They were terrified for her future. They painted a picture of a future where their mother, in her 70s or 80s, would be left with nothing, a cautionary tale of a woman who gave everything away for a fantasy. But Jenny, blinded by love and her belief in Sumit, simply couldn't or wouldn't see it. For her, it was an investment in her happiness. For them, it was watching their mother liquidate her future. So they made a choice, a desperate, calculated, and legally audacious choice. They realized that words were useless. Pleading was pointless. The only way to get through to their mother, and more importantly, to force a change in Sumit and his family, was to speak the only language that seemed to matter in this whole equation: money. They decided to turn off the tap. This brings us to the evidence, the smoking gun in this entire affair. Through our contacts, we've learned of the existence of a legal filing. It's not something you'll see on television. It's a dry, procedural document, but its implications are catastrophic for Jenny. Using the very power of attorney their mother granted them, Christina and Dominique, with the guidance of a family lawyer in the United States, have legally frozen her primary U.S. retirement account. It's a brokerage account, the main reservoir of her life savings, the one she draws from for all major expenses. It is, effectively, the bank that has been funding her life in India. And now, it's locked down. The daughters didn't do this quietly. They did it with a formal declaration, a shot across the bow of the entire Singh family. They issued a statement through their lawyer, a carefully worded justification for their unprecedented actions. We've obtained the core text of that statement. It reads, "This action was taken with the heaviest of hearts, as a last resort to protect our mother's long-term financial security and emotional well-being. After years of attempts to communicate our concerns, we can no longer, in good conscience, facilitate or fund what we consider to be a financially and emotionally abusive situation. The funds will be held in trust and will be immediately and fully released to our mother upon her permanent return to the United States and the establishment of her residency here." Let's break that down. This is a masterclass in strategic communication. They don't frame it as a punishment. They frame it as a rescue. They use loaded terms like financially and emotionally abusive, directly pointing the finger not at their mother, but at the situation Sumit has created. They are not stealing her money, they are protecting it. They are not betraying her, they are saving her from herself and from him. And they offer a clear, simple path to resolution. Come home. By doing this, they've shifted the narrative. In their telling, they are the heroes of the story, the ones brave enough to do what had to be done. They have essentially taken their mother hostage, financially, for her own good. This isn't just a theory anymore. The evidence proves it's real. This is the ultimate financial power play. The daughters have executed a plan that is both brilliant and breathtakingly cruel. They concluded, correctly or not, that their mother was in a feedback loop of emotional dependence, and that Sumit and his family were in a feedback loop of financial dependence. The only way to break both cycles was with a shock to the system so profound it would force everyone to confront the reality they've been avoiding. They are betting everything on one brutal hypothesis, that the love between Jenny and Sumit cannot survive without the steady flow of American cash. They believe that once the ATM runs dry, Sumit's devotion and his family's tolerance will dry up with it. They are calling his bluff on a global scale, and they've used their own mother's trust as the collateral. The reckoning was not delayed. It wasn't a slow realization. It was immediate, and it was catastrophic. The story of the first domino to fall is almost mundane in its setting, which makes it all the more devastating. Jenny and Sumit were out for dinner, a simple pleasure their lifestyle afforded them. They finished their meal, and Jenny, as she had done thousands of times before, handed over her American debit card, the one linked to her main account. The waiter returned a moment later with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's been declined." Jenny, we're told, laughed it off. A network error, a problem with the machine. She was confident, secure in the knowledge of the numbers in her account. She told him to try again. He did, declined. The embarrassment started to creep in. Sumit, ever the conflict avoider, looked uncomfortable. Shifting in his seat, Jenny, now flustered, pulled out a different card, a credit card also linked to her U.S. finances. The waiter took it. A few minutes later, he returned with the same result, declined. The panic began to set in. This wasn't a simple glitch. This was a system-wide failure. They managed to pay for the meal with the cash they had on hand, but the car ride home was silent and thick with tension. The moment they got through the door, Jenny was on the phone, navigating the time difference to call her bank in the United States. After an eternity on hold, she finally got a representative. She explained the situation, her voice tight with anxiety. The representative put her on hold again to check the account. When he came back on the line, his tone was formal, detached. He confirmed her identity and then delivered the news that would shatter her world. "Yes, ma'am, I see the issue. There is a legal freeze on the account, placed by your power of attorneys, Christina and Dominique." Imagine hearing those words. The two names you trust most in the world, the names of your children, are being used as the reason your life has just been turned upside down. The betrayal must have felt like a physical blow. The bank representative couldn't give her any more information. It was a legal matter. She would have to speak to her daughters. The ensuing video call was, according to our sources, an explosion of emotion. Jenny, crying and screaming, accused them of the ultimate betrayal. "How could you do this to me? This is my money, my life. You have no right." But Christina and Dominique were ready. They didn't back down. They were calm, resolute, almost eerily prepared. They had rehearsed this. They repeated the lines from their lawyer's statement. "We're doing this to protect you, Mom. We are not letting you end up with nothing. We love you. And that's why we had to do this. The money is safe. It's waiting for you here. All you have to do is come home." It was a checkmate. They had used Jenny's love for them and the trust she had placed in them as a weapon against the life she had chosen. Jenny was left sputtering, threatening legal action, but the reality was she was in India, with limited resources, and they had acted within the legal framework she herself had established. She was trapped. Now, let's look at the brutal, day-to-day reality of this financial lockdown. What does this actually mean for Jenny and Sumit? People hear account frozen, and it sounds abstract. It's not. It's terrifyingly concrete. The large retirement account, the one that paid for their rent, their car, their utilities, their trips, their dinners out, it's gone. Wiped off the map. What's left? What little Jenny has is her monthly Social Security check. It's a direct deposit, a government payment which the daughters likely could not legally interfere with. But that amount, while a helpful supplement for a retiree living in the US, is a pitifully small sum to base an entire life on, especially the comfortable life they had become accustomed to. We're talking about a drop in income of somewhere between 70 and 90% overnight. It is an unlivable amount. Their rent alone likely consumes most of it. There's nothing left for food, for electricity, for gasoline, for anything. The cushion is gone. The safety net has been shredded. The lifestyle they knew ended the moment that credit card was declined. Jenny has gone from being a financially independent woman, a benefactor, to being effectively destitute in a foreign country. Her only lifeline is a meager government check that barely keeps her afloat. And this forces the ultimate question, the one Sumit has successfully avoided for over a decade. What now? The entire structure of his marriage was built on the premise that Jenny was the financial provider. He was the loving husband, the cultural guide, the emotional support. But the role of breadwinner was never truly on the table. He talked about working. He made gestures toward getting a job. He explored a few options, like the food business with his friend. But there was never any urgency. There was never any real existential pressure, because at the end of the day, Jenny's American bank account was always there to catch them. That's over. The daughters have not just cut off their mom. They have surgically removed Sumit's safety net. He is now faced with the stark reality he has masterfully dodged his entire adult life. Get a real job, a career, immediately, and become the primary provider for his family, or watch his marriage dissolve under the crushing weight of financial ruin. There is no middle ground. There is no more "I'll figure it out later." Later is now. The bluff has been called. He can no longer sell the dream of a future where he might contribute. He has to contribute now, today, or they won't have a roof over their heads next month. This move by the daughters is a strategic masterstroke because it attacks the weakest point in the relationship's foundation. They are not trying to convince their mother that Sumit doesn't love her. They are creating a situation where Sumit has to prove he loves her in the most tangible, material way possible. Love, in this new reality, isn't just about sweet words and chai in the morning. It's about a paycheck. It's about paying the rent. It's about responsibility. It is a direct challenge to Sumit. You say you love her? Prove it. Take care of her the way she has taken care of you for 10 years. The ride is over. It's your turn to provide. And what about Sumit's family? Anil and Sahna. Their acceptance of Jenny has always been fragile, conditional, and deeply reluctant. A huge part of their eventual, grudging acceptance was the undeniable fact that Jenny provided a stable, comfortable life for their son. Sumit was not struggling. In fact, he was living better than many of his peers, all without the pressures of a traditional career. But what happens now? What happens when Sumit has to come to them, hat in hand, and explain that Jenny's money is gone? The reaction we can predict will be swift and brutal. Sana's "I told you so" will echo through their home. All of her worst fears and predictions will have come true. In her eyes, their son tied his life to an older, foreign woman, and now that woman is a financial dependent. She is no longer an asset. She is a liability. The social shame will be immense. Their son, a man in his mid-30s, is married to a woman in her 60s who cannot support herself, and he himself has no established career to fall back on. It is in their cultural context, a complete and utter disaster. The pressure they will now exert on Sumit will be unimaginable. Before, it was about social norms and disappointment. Now, it will be about survival and family honor. They will almost certainly demand that Sumit rectify the situation, and in their minds, there is only one way to do that: dissolve the marriage and cut his losses. They will see this as a divine intervention, a chance for Sumit to escape the situation they have hated for a decade. They will not see Jenny's daughters as villains. They will likely see them as sensible women who have finally come to their senses, doing what's best for their own family. So Jenny is completely and utterly isolated. She is in a country that is not her own. Her financial independence has been stripped away, her husband is in a state of panic, and her in-laws are likely about to declare open war on her presence in their family. Her only allies, her own children, are the architects of her predicament, holding her future hostage from thousands of miles away. It is a prison constructed of love, fear, and international banking laws. This is the core of the daughters' gamble. They believe that Sumit is not capable of rising to this challenge. They are betting that he will crumble under the pressure. They are betting that his love for Jenny is conditional on the comfort she provides. They are betting that his parents' influence will prove stronger than his marital vows once the money is gone. They are not just trying to force their mother home, they are trying to force the collapse of her marriage, believing it to be a house of cards that only needed one financial gust of wind to come tumbling down. The question that hangs in the air is, are they right? Is Sumit's love a fragile thing, propped up by a steady stream of dollars? Or is there something deeper there, a bond that can withstand this financial firestorm? For a decade, Sumit has been a man defined by his passivity, his inability to make a hard choice, his tendency to placate everyone and commit to no one fully. That man cannot survive in this new reality. He either has to evolve instantly into a decisive, responsible, and resourceful provider, or he has to retreat back into the safety of his parents' home, leaving his marriage in ashes. Jenny, for her part, is trapped between a rock and a hard place. Does she fight her own children, potentially engaging in a costly and emotionally draining international legal battle to regain control of her own assets? Does she surrender, pack her bags, and return to the US, proving her daughters right and leaving the love of her life behind? Or does she stay, placing a desperate bet on Sumit, hoping against hope that he will transform into the man she always believed he could be, and face a life of genuine poverty and struggle in India? There are no good options here. Every path forward is paved with sacrifice and heartbreak. The daughters, in their attempt to rescue their mother, have potentially destroyed her. They've replaced one perceived prison with another, more literal one. They have weaponized their love and their mother's trust, and in doing so, have started a fire that may consume everything Jenny has ever cared about. They call it a rescue, but from Jenny's perspective, stranded and penniless in India, it must feel like the ultimate betrayal. The financial ultimatum has been delivered. The clock is ticking, and the world is watching to see if this desperate gamble will save a family or shatter it forever. The Bank of Daughters is officially in session, and they are calling in the debt. What no one seems to realize is that the price might be far higher than anyone is prepared to pay. The foundation of Jenny and Sumit's life has been obliterated. What rises from the rubble will define the rest of their lives. The initial shockwave has passed, and now the aftershocks are beginning, each one threatening to bring another part of their world crashing down. Let's dissect the immediate aftermath, the 72 hours following the fateful phone call. Jenny is in a state of emotional whiplash, cycling through incandescent rage at her daughters, profound fear about her future, and a desperate, clinging need for reassurance from Sumit. Sumit, on the other hand, is a deer in the headlights. The abstract concept of needing a job has morphed overnight into the terrifyingly concrete reality of, we have no money for rent next month. He is experiencing a level of pressure he has never known. His entire life has been a series of buffer zones. His parents, his friends, and for the last decade, Jenny's seemingly bottomless well of American savings. All of those buffers are now gone. He is emotionally and financially exposed. The first major aftershock is the conversation he must have with his parents. He can't hide this. The moment he asks them for money, which is an inevitability, the truth will come out. We can imagine him going to their house, his posture stooped, his voice low. He sits with Anil and Sahna and explains the situation. He likely tries to spin it, to downplay the severity, but Sahna is too sharp for that. She would see through it instantly. Her children took her money away? They cut her off? The look on her face would be a mixture of vindication and horror. Vindication because her deepest suspicions about this arrangement have been validated. It was always about money, and it was never stable. Horror because her son is now tied to a woman who is, in her eyes, worthless. Anil, always the more pragmatic one, would focus on the numbers. What is your plan? How will you live? You have no job. She has no money. What is the plan, Sumit? And Sumit would have no answer. I'm looking. I'm trying. These are the same phrases he's been using for years, but they ring hollow now. They are the words of a child, not a husband. The conversation would end with an ultimatum from them, a mirror of the one from Jenny's daughters. You must leave her. This is your chance to fix your life. Come home. We will take care of you, but we will not support this marriage. She is not our responsibility. Sumit returns to his apartment with Jenny, now crushed between two impossible pressures. On one side, his wife, his love, is looking at him with desperate eyes, needing him to be her rock, her provider, her hero. On the other hand, his parents, the foundation of his entire life, are demanding he abandon ship to save himself. This is the choice he has always avoided, Jenny or his parents. The money allowed him to exist in a gray area, to have both. Now that gray area has vanished. He must choose. The second aftershock is the social humiliation. News in their community travels fast. The couple that was once seen as eccentric but stable, the Indian man with the well-off American wife, is now a subject of gossip and pity. Their landlord will soon be asking for rent they don't have. The shopkeepers they frequent will notice their purchases dwindling. Sumit, who has always cared deeply about appearances and social standing, will feel this acutely. He will feel the eyes on him, the whispered judgments. He is no longer the man living a modern, international life. He is the unemployed man living off his older wife, who has now run out of money. It's a complete reversal of his status, and for a man as conflict-averse as Sumit, this public shame is a powerful and destructive force. Now, let's turn our attention back to the daughters. From their perspective in America, they are waiting. They have dropped the bomb, and now they are watching the fallout from a safe distance. Their phones are likely a constant barrage of frantic, angry, and tearful messages from their mother. They are holding the line, repeating their mantra. We love you. Come home. The money is here for you. It's a cruel but simple strategy. They have to withstand the emotional onslaught from their mother in the belief that they are saving her. But we have to ask, is there a darker motivation at play here? Is this purely about protecting their mother's finances? Or is it also about control? Is it about resentment? For a decade, they have felt secondary in their mother's life. They have watched her prioritize her relationship with Sumit above all else, even missing out on precious time with her grandchildren. Is this, perhaps, a subconscious or even conscious effort to reclaim their mother? To force her back into her role as mom and grandma in America, and to sever the connection that took her away from them? By controlling her money, they control her location. They control her choices. The line between protection and possession is dangerously thin, and it's very possible they have crossed it. They have infantilized their own mother. Taking away her autonomy under the guise of parental concern, it's a role reversal of the most extreme kind. This brings us to Jenny's legal options, which are bleak. Can she fight this? Yes, in theory, she could hire an American lawyer to challenge the power of attorney. She could argue that her daughters are not acting in her best interest, and that she is not incapacitated, but this would require a huge amount of money for legal fees, money she no longer has. It would also mean formally suing her own children, a devastating prospect that would likely burn the final bridge between them. It would be a long, ugly, and expensive battle that she would have to fight from India. The daughters and their lawyer know this. They have created a situation that is legally fortified and practically impossible for Jenny to fight. Her lack of resources is now the primary defense for their actions. It's a perfect, vicious circle. So, with the legal and familial pressures mounting, the focus returns to the central couple. The atmosphere in their apartment must be suffocating. Every conversation is about money. Every glance is filled with unspoken fear. The small joys of their life are gone, replaced by the crushing anxiety of impending poverty. Jenny looks at Sumit, and for the first time, she might be seeing him not through the lens of love, but through the lens of survival. Can this man save us? Does he have it in him? The doubts, which she has pushed down for years, must be surfacing. And Sumit looks at Jenny and sees the source of all his problems. It's not her fault, but she is the reason his parents are furious. She is the reason he's facing this impossible choice. The love is surely still there, but it is now competing with a powerful cocktail of fear, resentment, and a feeling of being completely and utterly trapped. Relationships are tested by hardship, but this isn't a test. It's a cataclysm. It's like testing the seaworthiness of a boat by dropping it into a hurricane. The daughter's theory was that the relationship would collapse once the American ATM ran dry. We are now seeing this theory play out in real time. The first cracks are appearing not because the love is gone, but because the external pressures are becoming stronger than the internal bond. Sumit is being pulled back toward his family of origin by a gravitational force of cultural expectation and financial necessity. Jenny is being pulled back toward her family by the financial lifeline they are holding out. Their love is the only thing in the middle, trying to resist these two immense opposing forces. This is no longer a simple story about a May-December romance. It has become a multi-front war. It's Jenny versus her daughters. It's Sumit versus his parents. It's Jenny and Sumit versus a world of financial reality they have never had to face. And ultimately, it's a battle within Jenny herself. Her love for Sumit versus her instinct for self-preservation and her love for her children. The daughter's desperate move has done more than just freeze a bank account. It has forced a reckoning that has been a decade in the making. They haven't just cut their mother off, they may have severed the very foundations of her identity, her happiness, and her will to fight. The financial ultimatum was the first shot. The emotional war is just beginning. What will be left when the dust settles is anyone's guess, but it's hard to imagine that anyone on any side of this conflict will come out unscathed. The fallout is spreading, and the real victims are just beginning to be counted. The next phase of this crisis is psychological unraveling. Money is more than purchasing power. It's a symbol of independence, of security, of adulthood. By taking that away, Jenny's daughters have stripped her of her status, not just in Sumit's family, but in her own mind. For her entire adult life, she was a provider, a worker, a self-sufficient American woman. Now she has been rendered a dependent, a charity case. This is a profound psychological blow. It attacks her sense of self-worth. We can imagine her quiet moments when Sumit is out of the house, perhaps frantically and fruitlessly looking for work. She sits in their apartment, an apartment she can no longer afford, and the walls start to close in. Every object she sees, every piece of furniture, every decoration, is a reminder of a life that is no longer hers. It was all purchased with money she can no longer access. She is a queen in a castle, but her daughters have changed the locks and seized the treasury. Her sense of helplessness must be absolute. She has no power, no agency. She is completely at the mercy of others' decisions, her daughter's decision to cut her off, and Sumit's ability, or inability, to fix it. This powerlessness will inevitably begin to curdle into resentment, and it will be aimed at the person closest to her, Sumit. Even if she knows, rationally, that this is not his fault, the emotional reality is that her life was fine before him. She had a home in America. She had her savings. She was near her family. She chose to give all of that up for him. And now, because of that choice, she is trapped and penniless. The thought, however unwelcome, will creep into her mind. Was it worth it? Every time Sumit comes home empty-handed, every time they have to eat a meager meal because it's all they can afford, a small part of her will blame him. Not because he caused the freeze, but because his lack of financial contribution made the freeze so devastating. This is the poison that the daughters have injected into the relationship. They have created a scenario where Jenny and Sumit are almost forced to turn on each other. The pressure is designed to break them. It's a crucible, and the daughters are betting that what emerges is not a stronger, more resilient couple, but two broken individuals who can no longer stand the sight of each other, weighed down by failure and recrimination. Let's consider Sumit's journey in this. He is on a crash course with reality. He has to confront the consequences of his own passivity. For years, he could tell himself that he would get a job one day. He could tell himself that he was contributing to the relationship emotionally, but now he is being forced to measure his worth in rupees, and he's coming up short. This is an assault on his manhood, especially within a culture that still holds strong traditional views on the role of a husband as a provider. He is failing at the most basic level. His frantic job search will likely be a humiliating experience. What skills does he have that are immediately marketable for the kind of salary they need? His experiences in call centers and more recently, a fledgling food business. It's not the background of a high-earning professional. He will face rejection after rejection. He will be offered jobs with salaries that are a fraction of what they need to survive. With each rejection, his confidence will shrink. His panic will grow. He will start to see the futility of his situation, the sheer size of the financial mountain he is expected to climb. And as his hope dwindles, so too will Jenny's hope in him. This is where Sumit's parents will make their move. They will see his struggle, his despair, and they will offer him an escape route. Son, you tried. It is not your fault. This was a mistake from the beginning. Come home. Let us help you. You can start over. You are still young. You can find a proper wife, have a family. You don't have to drown with her. Their words will sound like a siren's song, an easy way out of an impossible situation. The comfort of his childhood home, the approval of his parents, a life free from this crushing financial burden. It will be incredibly tempting. All he has to do is give up on Jenny, and so the stage is set for the ultimate confrontation. It won't be a big, dramatic fight. It will be a quiet, devastating conversation in their apartment. It will come after weeks of struggle, of missed rent payments, of living on fumes. Sumit will come to Jenny, his spirit broken, and he will tell her he can't do it. He can't fix it. He will tell her about the pressure from his parents. He will tell her there's no way out, and he will utter the words that the daughters have been banking on from the beginning. Maybe they are right. Maybe you should go home. For Jenny, hearing those words from Sumit's lips would be the final fatal blow. It would be the confirmation of her deepest fears. It would prove that his love was, in fact, conditional. It would mean that her daughters were right all along. The betrayal would be complete, not just from her children, but from the man for whom she sacrificed everything. In that moment, her fight would be over. There would be nothing left to fight for. The financial ultimatum would have succeeded. This is the endgame the daughters envisioned. A defeated mother, her heart broken, with no choice but to use the one-way ticket back to America that they are no doubt willing to provide. She would return, not as a conquering hero of love, but as a cautionary tale. She would be financially secure, yes. Her money would be waiting for her. But she would be emotionally shattered, her belief in love and trust completely destroyed. She would have her savings account back, but she would have lost everything else. Is this a rescue, or is it the most cruel and calculated form of emotional destruction, disguised as financial prudence? This is the tough one. Let us know whose side you're on in the comments. But what if the endgame the daughters envisioned isn't the one that plays out? What if their perfect calculated strategy, designed on spreadsheets and legal advice in the sterile environment of an American law office, failed to account for the one variable they could never quantify: the chaotic, unpredictable, and sometimes illogical resilience of the human heart? They dropped a nuclear bomb on their mother's life, expecting total surrender. But sometimes, in the irradiated wasteland of a life blown apart, something new and unexpected begins to grow. This is the part of the story they never saw coming. The theory of collapse was sound, but it was just that, a theory. The reality is proving to be far more complex and far more compelling. The conversation happened. It was as bleak and heartbreaking as we predicted. After weeks of mounting debt and growing despair, after another day of fruitless job searching, Sumit sat across from Jenny in the dim light of their living room. The electricity bill was overdue. They were using as few lights as possible. He couldn't meet her eyes. He mumbled the words, the surrender they had all been waiting for. I can't do this, Jenny. I don't know how. My parents, they said maybe you should go home. Maybe your daughters are right. Each word was a tiny shard of glass in the air between them. This was the moment of his ultimate failure, the verbalization of his weakness. He was giving up on her, on them. He was choosing the easy path his parents had laid out for him. And in that moment, Jenny's world, which had been shrinking for weeks, collapsed into a single point of absolute pain. The tears came, silent at first, then racking sobs of a woman who had gambled everything and lost. She had defended this man to her children, to her friends, to the world. She had believed in his love. And here he was, validating every doubt, confirming every accusation. He was exactly the weak, dependent man her daughters had painted him to be. She felt the fight drain out of her, the last embers of hope turning to cold ash. She was old, she was tired, and she was defeated. She nodded slowly, unable to speak, the silent gesture of a white flag being raised. The daughters had won. But then something shifted. Perhaps it was the sight of her utter devastation. Perhaps, for the first time, Sumit truly saw the depth of the pain he was causing, not as an abstract problem, but as a living, breathing wound in the person he claimed to love. Or perhaps it was a sudden, violent rebellion against his own pathetic nature. A lifetime of passivity, of letting his parents and then Jenny make the hard decisions, crested in that one moment of supreme self-loathing. He looked at this crying woman, this woman who had crossed oceans for him, and he looked at himself, the man advising her to run away because he was too weak to stand and fight. And he snapped. The change was not loud. It was a terrifying quiet. He stood up, his fists clenched. Jenny looked up, startled. His expression was one she had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but a cold, hard resolve. "No," he said, his voice low and firm. "No, I was wrong. You are not going anywhere. This is your home. I am your husband." Jenny stared at him, confused. "But Sumit, there's no money. Your parents—" He cut her off. "Forget my parents. Forget your daughters. This is about us now. Only us. They think they can break us? They think they know who I am? They're about to find out they're wrong. We are not finished." In that moment, the man Jenny fell in love with, the charming, gentle, somewhat passive man, died. And a new Sumit was born from the erring ashes of his own failure, a man forged in desperation. Jenny, looking at him, felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks, a dangerous, terrifying hope. She didn't know if she could trust it, but it was the only thing she had left. The next morning, Sumit was a different person. The moping was gone. The aimless despair was replaced by a frantic, focused energy. He told Jenny, "We need a plan, a war plan." He grabbed a piece of paper. On one side, he wrote, "income." On the other hand, outgoings. Under outgoings, he and Jenny listed everything, every single bill, every rupee they owed. The number was staggering. Under income, there was only one line, Jenny's small Social Security check. The imbalance was comical and terrifying. "Okay," Sumit said, staring at the blank space under income. "This is what I have to fix." He left the apartment that morning not with the slumped shoulders of a man hoping for a job, but with the determined stride of a soldier going to war. His first stop was not a corporate office. It was the kitchen of his friend, Rohit, the one with whom he had briefly started the tiffin, or meal delivery service. He didn't ask to be a partner this time. He swallowed his pride, the hardest thing he had ever done. "Rohit," he said, "I don't need a business. I need a job. Any job. I will wash the dishes. I will chop the vegetables. I will make the deliveries. You pay me what you can at the end of the day. Please. I need this." Rohit, seeing the raw desperation in his friend's eyes, a desperation he had never seen before, agreed. Sumit spent the next 12 hours in a hot, cramped kitchen, doing the most menial labor imaginable. He came home late that night, exhausted, smelling of onions and curry powder, and placed a small, crumpled wad of bills on the table. It wasn't much. It was a pittance, but it was more than zero. It was the first rupee that he had earned to contribute to their household in a very long time. For Jenny, that small pile of cash was more beautiful than all the savings in her frozen American bank account. It was proof. It was a start. While Sumit was working, Jenny was fighting her own battles. She took that list of outgoings and became a ruthless general of their finances. She called their landlord and, for the first time, did the talking. She explained the situation, promised they would pay, and negotiated a payment plan, buying them a few precious weeks. She went to the market and haggled with a ferocity she didn't know she possessed, buying lentils and rice and the cheapest vegetables. Their comfortable life was over. They were now living a life of extreme austerity. But they were doing it together. A strange thing was happening. As their financial situation grew more desperate, their emotional bond grew stronger. The crisis wasn't breaking them apart, it was fusing them together. Meanwhile, back in the United States, the daughters were growing impatient. Their plan was predicated on a quick collapse. They expected a call from a sobbing mother within a week, begging for a ticket home. Instead, they got brief, tense updates. "Things are hard, but we're managing," Jenny would say, her voice strained but not broken. This was not part of the script. Christina and Dominique couldn't understand it. How were they surviving? What was Sumit doing? Their mother was being evasive, and it fueled their suspicion that Sumit was somehow manipulating her further, perhaps getting money from his parents to prolong the charade. This is where the story takes a darker, more conspiratorial turn. Our sources indicate that the daughters, frustrated by their mother's unexpected resilience, decided to escalate. They believed they needed to cut off any potential local support Sumit might be receiving. And so they made a move that is almost beyond belief in its cold calculation. They decided to form an alliance with the one person who hated the marriage as much as they did, Sahna. Through an intermediary, a cousin in the US with contacts in India, Christina allegedly initiated a video call with Sumit's mother. Imagine the scene. Two American women in their suburban homes, talking to an Indian mother in her traditional living room, a translator patching their conversation together. They came from different worlds, but they were united by a single obsessive goal: to separate Jenny and Sumit. Christina and Dominique laid out their strategy to Sahna. They confirmed that the money was gone permanently. "There is no more," they explained. "It will never come back as long as she is with your son. We want to make sure you understand this. Do not give them any money. He needs to understand that this is a dead end." Sahna, in turn, was likely thrilled. These American women were not her enemies. They were her most powerful allies. She now had the ultimate weapon to use against her son. She could confirm with absolute certainty that Jenny was no longer a financial asset. She could tell Sumit that even Jenny's own family knew this marriage was a mistake. She assured them, "Do not worry. We will not help them. My son must learn his lesson. He must come home." This unholy alliance was now working in concert, from two different continents, to systematically dismantle Jenny and Sumit's life. The daughters in America had control of the global finances. Sahna in India had control of the local familial support system. Jenny and Sumit were caught in a pincer movement, a coordinated attack designed to leave them with absolutely no way out. The pressure from Sahna became relentless. She would call Sumit daily. "I spoke to Jenny's daughters," she would say, a triumphant tone in her voice. "They are very sensible. They know you cannot take care of her. They are waiting for her to come home. Why are you prolonging this misery? Why do you insist on this failure? You are shaming our family." Every day was a fresh psychological assault designed to wear him down, to make him feel like a complete and utter failure. But Sumit, powered by his newfound resolve, resisted. Every insult from his mother, he used as fuel. Every rupee he earned washing dishes, he saw as a tiny victory against her. He was no longer just fighting for his marriage. He was fighting for his own identity, for the right to be seen as a man, not a child. He started looking for other work. He used the one unique asset he had: his fluency in English and his familiarity with American culture, thanks to a decade with Jenny. He printed up crude business cards, offering his services as a local guide and translator for tourists. He would stand for hours in areas of the city frequented by foreigners, trying to sell his services. Most days he got nothing, but occasionally he would get a client, an American couple who wanted to see the real Delhi, not the tourist traps. He would take them to the markets he knew, translate for them, tell them stories. He was good at it. He was charming and knowledgeable, and at the end of the day, they would press a few thousand rupees into his hand, more than he could make in a week at the restaurant. It was still not enough. They were treading water, but the tide of their debt was rising. The landlord's patience was wearing thin. The eviction notice finally came. They had 2 weeks to pay the full amount of their back rent, or they would be out on the street. This was the final wall. This was the test they could not pass. Sumit's frantic efforts and Jenny's Scrooge-like budgeting had kept them afloat. But this was a tidal wave. They sat in their apartment, the eviction notice on the table between them, and for the first time since his transformation, Sumit felt the cold tendrils of despair creeping back in. He had fought as hard as he could, and it wasn't enough. The daughters and his mother were about to win. In a last desperate act, Sumit went to his father Anil. Not for money, but for advice, for a blessing. For something. He found him alone. Sahna was out. He laid out the entire situation: the eviction, the jobs he was working, the pressure from his mother, the alliance with Jenny's daughters. He confessed his fears and his failures, but he ended his speech with a statement of intent. "I am not leaving her, father. I don't know how, but we will survive this." Even if we are on the street, I will not leave her. Anil listened in silence, his face unreadable. He had watched his son's frantic efforts over the past weeks with a quiet, hidden pride. He had seen a change in Sumit that he had been waiting to see for 30 years. His son, the boy who always ran from responsibility, was finally acting like a man. He was taking ownership of his life, his choices, his marriage. And in that moment, Anil had to make his own choice between his wife's rigid cultural beliefs and his son's newfound honor. He looked at Sumit. "You have shamed this family for a decade," he said, his voice stern. Sumit's face fell. "But," Anil continued, "what you have been doing these last few weeks, working with your hands, standing up to your mother, providing for your wife, this is the first time in a long time you have made me proud." Sumit looked up, his eyes wide with shock. Anil went to a drawer, took out a bank book, and wrote a check. He handed it to Sumit. It was for the full amount of the back rent. "This is not for her," Anil said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This is for you. This is a loan, and you will pay me back every rupee. Your mother must never know about this. This is between us, father to son. You have chosen your path. Now, walk it like a man." Sumit took the check, his hands trembling. It was not a handout. It was a vote of confidence. It was the validation he had craved his entire life, coming from the most unexpected source. He had gone to his father expecting a lecture and had left with a lifeline and something even more valuable: his respect. They paid the rent. They were safe, for now. That night, Jenny and Sumit sat together, not in despair, but in a state of quiet, exhausted triumph. They were poorer than they had ever been. Their future was a terrifying blank. They were surrounded by enemies, both family and foe, who were actively conspiring to destroy them. But they survived. They had faced the worst, and they were still standing together. The financial ultimatum, the masterstroke designed to tear them apart, had failed. In fact, it had achieved the exact opposite. It had stripped away the unhealthy financial dynamic that had defined their relationship and replaced it with a partnership forged in the fires of adversity. Sumit was no longer the kept man, and Jenny was no longer the American ATM. They were just two people, in love, fighting for their life against the world. Back in America, the news, when it trickled back to them, was met with stunned disbelief. They had survived the eviction. Their plan, their perfect, logical, brutal plan, had not worked. Their mother was not coming home. In fact, she sounded stronger, more resolved than ever. Their alliance with Sahna had failed to break Sumit's will. They had unleashed their ultimate weapon, and it had been deflected. Now, Christina and Dominique are faced with a new reality. Their mother is still in India, in a relationship they despise, and now she is living in genuine poverty, her situation far more precarious than it was before they intervened. From their perspective, their rescue mission has backfired catastrophically. They have not saved their mother. They have plunged her into a life of squalor and struggle, and in the process may have strengthened the very bond they sought to sever. What is their next move? Do they double down? Do they find new ways to apply pressure, to make life even more impossible for Jenny and Sumit? Or do they finally have to confront the possibility that they have underestimated not only Sumit, but their own mother? That the love they dismissed as a fantasy might actually be real, and resilient enough to withstand even their most determined efforts to destroy it? The daughter's action, born of desperation, has created a man out of the boy they so despised. In their attempt to prove Sumit was worthless, they forced him to find his worth. Was this a heroic rescue that accidentally created a better man? Or was it a cruel betrayal that has trapped their mother in a cycle of poverty, even if she is emotionally happier? The lines have become impossibly blurred. The Bank of Daughters set out to foreclose on a relationship, but they may have inadvertently funded its reconstruction from the ground up, with a foundation far stronger than money could ever buy. The war is far from over, but the first major battle has been won, not by the side with all the money and power, but by the side with nothing left to lose.